Rusty, you were in Nashville, and Palmer, you wrote about Kirby Smart's comments on NIL from the spring meeting. So a big NIL week in review at On3's NIL Elite Series, and then the coaches' spring meetings. NIL always going to be a big topic. And Kirby had some interesting things to say about, maybe Congress getting involved, and he didn't think that would impact leadership. That's what he said to Paul Feinbaum. He thinks that Congress could have an impact on it, but there may be some casualties along the way with other sports, even though Kirby's not worried about NIL destroying college football. We don't really touch on NIL specifically on this show, but with those touch points over the last few days, Rusty, I'm curious about your takeaway about the momentum from the athlete's point of view before we kind of toss the ball over to Palmer on your feedback from what Kirby had to say. Rusty, what were your takeaways from Nashville last week?
Just education. I mean, the parents, I had two parents come to me. I had one parent come up to me, and I won't say who it was, but it was a 5-star, and basically said, hey, listen, thank you so much for the last couple of days. This being here, we were so focused on trying to figure out NIL that we kind of forgot how much an education was worth. And we had a great slide. Shannon Terry had a great slide on what an education is valued at, along with all the perks, all the per diems, everything. If you go to one of these major Power 5 schools and you're there like 4 years, like Georgia and Alabama, Ohio State, Tennessee, somewhere like that, it's almost $500,000, basically, because the living expenses, food expenses, and all those things. And I just thought it was really cool. We're all learning together. You know what I mean? So NIL is not going anywhere. They're going to have to do some things. They'll probably try to do some things. It's not going anywhere. It's going to be a part of college recruiting. So these kids have to learn about it. These parents have to ask questions. And man, there was a lot of people there. There was a lot of people there that answered questions. And I thought Kirk Herbstreit was great. Kirk Herbstreit touched on several subjects, but I loved the part where he talked about enjoy the college experience. Go to baseball games during the week. Go to gymnastics meets, go hang out with your boys, have the entire college experience, and enjoy. Don't be in such a rush to go to the NFL. Everybody's racing to go to the NFL. The odds are you're not going to make it. So enjoy it. I thought it was a great message, and he really was a hit.
Yeah, I mean, I think just listening to Kirby, you can tell that NIL is going to be a part of college athletics, and I don't think that he's against that. I think what he wants to see is a level playing field. I thought it was pretty telling. He said, he said, I just love college athletics across the board. And when you start talking about some of the ramifications that are coming down the line, it's going to impact Olympic sports, non-revenue sports. And I love all sports of college. Like you said, Wes, Kirby doesn't see this destroying college football, but some of the ramifications, if there's not any sort of level playing field, rules and regulations across the board, that's where it could end up hurting some of those other sports. I think it's awesome for these athletes to get opportunities to to make some money and to utilize the platform that they're on, being representatives of the University of Georgia or Tennessee or Alabama or wherever. I think it's really cool that they do have those opportunities. But I do agree with Kirby there where he says, in terms of the recruiting side of things, you're dealing with kids from all over the country that are coming from different states that have different rules. He has to operate under the Georgia rules, but, take a kid from, Tennessee. He's got, he's working under the conception of, hey, I can do X, Y, and Z. Well, the X, Y, and Z may not be allowed in the state of Georgia. The, TSSAA, Tennessee's sports, may have a different rule than GHSA.
Yeah.
So,
California just passed a bill this past week for revenue sharing for college athletes. And once, USC and UCLA make it to the Big Ten, you're talking about life-changing money for those players that may not have it in other states. And it's interesting that Greg Sankey is kind of looking at the SEC and trying to look at it as a cohesive thing and get the member schools in the Southeastern Conference to all have a level playing field. Will all the schools in all those states want that? Will they want to find some advantages that they didn't have traditionally? I mean, once we get above the coaches, once we get above that pay grade, some of the administrators, it's only going to get crazier, but it does. I think it helps that we've already covered this much ground at least, and we've already learned this much.
And Wes, I do think that states want to find those advantages for their in-state schools. They'd be silly not to try to keep, the student athletes or bring the student athletes to, within their borders and all the revenue that comes with that. That's why I think Sankey is being proactive about this, because by my count, the SEC represents 11 states. That'll be 12 when Oklahoma joins. And I totally could have missed the math there, but I think you're right. When you've got that many different sets of rules and regulations, you've got to have a central body that comes in and puts their foot down and says, this is what the rules are going to be. And so that's why Sankey, as somebody that's seeing this from so many different sides and different perspectives, he's willing to have his group of people go to a major governing body, Congress in this case, to try to push for some sort of regulations across the board that wouldn't just affect the SEC, but it would affect the NCAA. And I think that that's going to be important to making NIL sustainable, a sustainable method in college athletics.
Rusty, your co-host here at 92.9, Drew Butler, former Georgia punter, of course. Kirk Herbstreit said that college football governance could break away from the NCAA. I think that's something that a lot of people would agree with. But there's an idea here about a CBA, and Drew's a little skeptical about that. I don't blame Drew for his skepticism there, because that is a whole new can of worms, negotiating for all the players. The agent world is already insane as college athletes and recruits are trying to figure that out, what the union situation could look like. I mean, I think if you were to look back in like 2021 and tell people where we are today, they would freak out. They'd panic. They'd lose their minds. But it ultimately hasn't been that wild, I don't think. But I think, let's put this shoe on the other foot. Here in 2023, let's think about what college football could look like in 2027, 2028. It's kind of scary for the traditionalist college football fan. I get it, man. It's changing quickly.
Yeah, it's a lot to keep up with. And I mean,
NIL.
No, go ahead, Rusty.
No, I'm good. Go ahead.
No, I mean, the thing about NIL, you can't fight it. It's here to stay. They're in on it. I mean, there's no turning this thing back. And like you saw Eli Drinkowitz's quotes the other day, and obviously he had to come out and provide a little bit more context around that thing. But people, even the public perception, I think, has shifted in terms of, people are very accepting of the idea, where I don't know that going in a lot of people were. I think too, what you're also seeing is that market correction. Somebody over on 3, I think it was Pete Nakos, if I'm not mistaken, did a piece on it the other day about how, these guys are saying, that the numbers are changing. What we were hearing last year is not what we're hearing this year in terms of what guys are getting on deals as well. And so I think that's a net positive. And I tell people all the time who ask me how I feel about it, that I think it's going to move to the way it was always designed to be. It'll be used as an inducement in some respects, but not totally. And I think that that's really the key for everybody is, I think that you're going to find the money trickles up, and people won't just keep throwing money down a hole on guys that are unproven and untested. And I think that that's what we'll continue to see moving forward. But right now it is what it is. And, if you've got the opportunity to kind of put yourself back into relevance, why wouldn't you?
Falcons fan 1020. Speaking for a lot of fans like that, a lot of what you were just saying, Roos. I consider myself a traditionalist. I'm fine with change as long as Georgia can still find ways to win and be a great program. Seems like up until now, Kirby and Georgia have worked hard. They've been creative. They've thought about all the ways that they want this to work at their program and not totally, lose touch with what Georgia football should be. And they've won 2 national championships, so it's worked out.